Just saying that, folks. That noise is it's the fan zipping on the stove. See the popping. Gonna take about 3, 4, 5, 2, 1. Folks, thanks for stopping by. I do want to start this with saying that this is it's a short story time. It's a 50-year-old story. Yeah, and not telling no age or anything that's important. But it has to do with Guido. You're making noise, little boy. It has to do with well, it's way before the internet, and it can be called "What Made You Stop?" And if you got a minute already into this, that means that your fingers don't have carpal tunnel from flipping, you know, the swipe right thing or whatever they say. But, and don't hear me out if you don't want to, folks, but it is very important. This is a story that it can affect elderly people and probably will the most. And that's what it can mean. And you can actually be a very young person. Yeah. And it does have to do with altitude, aptitude. When you learn aptitude, you learn delayed gratification a little bit with it. Here's why. YouTube creators understand delayed gratification, but that has nothing to do with this, folks. This is very serious. And yeah, it's always good to wait for a sunny day. Story time. And it comes from a 72-year-old person at the time. 42 years ago from a 72-year-old person. And if you can't do math, yeah, stories are that old. I'm not reading it out of books, folks. It's come from straight from my ears, so that's one thing I got on you. But the coolest part is it has to do with who can relate to a story. And what can make someone wonder why they feel that way. This fellow's coming home from work every day. And, 50 years ago, someone could actually work 2 jobs, still do what they needed to do. And yeah, a lot of you already said, no. And here's why. Fella was telling me one time about how he used to come home every day. And what would happen is he knew that when he come around that block, that they had already seen this fellow come around the block. They had already seen this fellow coming around the block. And it was kids, the neighbors' kids too. And you had to go that way because it would be a one-way street. So that's how you had to get. And you were already seen. Cat was out of the bag. You're coming home. And you'd get to the corner, and yeah, he says he passed kids playing in a playground, and there was a fence. Now, picture the hours, folks, in time. 50 years ago plus, 72-year-old man telling a story. So it's old story. So, yeah, the fences had crosses in between the post instead of pickets, unless they were white. And he was telling me the story about how to come around the block. It didn't matter if you had a Suburban, and he did actually, he said it, and a ladder. And no, you're probably going to say, he's going to say it's a wooden ladder. No, folks, I'm not going to tell you it's a wooden ladder. It's an aluminum ladder, and it was only one piece of ladder, and it was that extension type of thing, and it was funny back then. And if you know how extensions ladders used to be back then, you would look at it and say, how did this thing even work? But what would happen when he would come around the corner, he was telling me that he already knew that he had to get in front of his fence because they were already running to him. And what they would do, he said, is they would run, jump. Oh shit! If he didn't stop, he said they were already jumping in the air. They would hit the hood of the Suburban. And then what he said they would do, they were already going so fast that knew they were going to hit the top, and they could hit the roof and grab the ladder and hang on. And there had been a couple of times when he didn't even know that they had fooled him, and when he got out of his truck, they were already on top of it. And he was telling me about this. And he also said all of the people he passed on the way when he stopped hated it. Because their kids ran out of the backyard and went with all the other kids. And they knew they were getting ready to have fun real quick and they wasn't going to get yelled at. I kid you not, folks, I couldn't even bend the piece of aluminum. I'm trying to work on this, and he's telling the story, and I'm trying to finish my job teach how to wrap windows or some dumb shit like that. I'm like, what the fuck? Whoa. But then what he was telling me was they would, by the time he got out of the house, everybody he didn't even know what went to the house and everything to sit to the couch and everything. And he was telling me a long time ago that when you went into the house after you got off of work, you already had he said his better half, he would call her, had already had the paper. They called it paper back then. It was newspaper, folks. So this isn't for young people, I guess. It was a newspaper. Had already been at his recliner. And he said he was joking. He said there was no remote control. And and I'm like, yeah, I remember that. And Mima and sitting down on the couch and all that stuff. I'm like, that's freaking killer. And then what he said was, and this all goes back to the one thing that makes him mad. I'm like, what the fuck never bothers you, dude? Are you fucked up? And he goes, he was telling me this story, and it was a true story. I found out that the only thing that turned his whole entire day bad, he said, was the fact that he could hear, and everybody's like, well, if you don't see something, it ain't fucking real. And he was telling me all this shit, and I'm like, holy fuck, dude. Just let me finish putting the white caulk on here. I already got bloody fucking fingers because I couldn't even finish my job fast enough. And the bloody fingers was from cutting my finger on the aluminum that I left when I was trying to caulk and, finish out the stupid window. And what he said was, I can hear people I can't get to, but I know their kids are having fun and their kids are still safe because it was the mom and dad that was screaming at each other. And I am not kidding, folks. He's like, oh, he's across the river, up the mountain, all this stuff and everything. And yeah, in the whatever's, the 70s, it would be even earlier than that. I'm assuming, no way, it would be the 40s and 50s. All the windows was open, so you heard every freaking thing that was going on in the neighborhood. And I was told that, and I was listening to that, and I about wanted to scream over to the foreman and like, get this fucking old man away from me. And then before I knew it, my whole entire day was over, and I realized exactly what he was talking about. And then he was like, wait, you didn't hear the whole entire story. And he goes, what did it changed for me? He said, well, and I was like, yeah, well, what the fuck happened when they stopped jumping on your hood? I was like, yeah, I did that shit in the wintertime and held on to bumpers and shit. And he goes, when all my kids and all those kids went to school, they quit. And he always looked down the road, he said, and he always saw those kids at the fence, and they wanted to go for a ride. And he was like, they never got to.